Today we're going to review operations with integers. So the goal today is for you to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide integers. Let's just review what an integer is before we get started here. So when we say an integer, what we mean is a number that has no fractional part, or we could call it just a whole number. So any of your counting numbers, and we have a few examples. We have -4, 5, 6, 8, 200. So we can have negative integers or we can have positive integers. And I'll just add that really quick here. So we have negative integers and that would be any of your negative numbers with no fractional part, so like -5, -2, and so on. And then we have positive integers. Okay, and those would just be any positive number with no fractional part. So we could say, 8, 10, 200, 300, anything like that would be a positive integer. So let's look at a couple scenarios. We're going to start with just adding and subtracting integers. So let's say you have same signs. Let's say you just have, let's say we have 3 plus 5. Okay, these are both positive integers. Okay, so that's all we have to do is we know that their sum is going to be positive. We just add the two numbers together and we'll have 8. Okay, let's say that we have two negative integers that we're adding. So let's say we have -3 plus -5. Okay, since we are adding two negative numbers, we know that our sum is going to be negative. And we're just combining the 3 and the 5. Okay, 3 and 5 is 8, so it's -8. We'll also look at how to do this on a number line here in a few minutes. Let's say that we have different signs now. Let's say we have a positive plus a negative. Let's say we have 3 plus -5. So here we have to look and see which number is the greater absolute value. So absolute value is the distance from 0. Which one of these numbers would be the furthest from 0? Okay, if we look at a number line here and let's say this is 0 and this is 1, 2, 3, and this is -1, 2, -3, -4, kind of ran out of room, -5. So the absolute value of -5 equals 5, and the absolute value of 3 is 3. Okay, the distance from 0 is 3. So since this one has the greater absolute value, we know that our sum is going to be negative. We'll go ahead and put that in a different color so you can see, so it doesn't run into our number line. So we know this is going to be negative, and we also know that, move that over a little bit. So we know it's a negative sum because that 5 has a greater absolute value. And if we look at it, there are if we take negative 3, or I'm sorry, 3 and negative 5, there's 2 left, so it's negative 2. Okay, just to show that on a number line, let's say this is our number line. And we're starting at 3, and we're going to move 5 units to the left. So we're starting at 3, and we want to go over 5 to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that takes us to negative 2. All right, let's say we have it the other way. Let's say we have negative 3 plus 5, negative 3 plus 5. Well, if we look at the absolute value, we know that the absolute value of 5 is greater than the absolute value of negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. The absolute value of 5 is 5. So we know that our sum is going to be positive. Okay, so it's going to be a positive 2. If we're at negative 3 on the number line and we move 5 units to the right, we will be at 2. Let's go ahead and demonstrate that. You can always check your work with a number line. So let's say here we're at negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're at negative 3 here. And we're moving 5 units to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That takes us to 2. Okay, let's do a couple more examples before we move on to multiplication and division. Okay, that number line's just there to help us as we look at some more examples. So let's say we have negative 2 plus 3. So we're going to start at negative 2, and we are adding 3. If I'm adding, I'm going to be increasing, so I'm going to go to the right. So plus 3. So 1, 2, 3. And that equals 1. All right, let's look at another one. So we have negative 3 plus negative 4. We're going to start at negative 3, and we're adding a negative 4. So if we're adding a negative, that means that we're technically going to be moving to the left. So we're going to move to the left 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that takes us to negative 7. Okay, let's say we have 11 minus 15. 11 minus 15. So we're going to start at 11, and we're going to go 15 to the left, okay, because subtraction means we're decreasing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so that takes us to negative 4. Before we move to multiplication and division, I do want to just mention whenever you're whenever you're subtracting a negative number, so let's say we have 3 minus a negative 4, we want to think of this as adding the opposite. So adding the opposite. So what that means is instead of subtracting, we're going to add, and we're going to take the opposite of negative 4. So remember, every positive integer can be paired with a negative integer, and that would be called opposites. So the opposite of a negative 4 would just be a positive 4. So 3 plus 4 is 7. Okay, so let's see if that holds true if I just do a regular subtraction problem. So let's say we have 2 minus 1. Okay, so we know that that equals 2. But let's take that and apply our adding the opposite concept to see if it works as well with this same problem. So I'm going to add, and then the opposite of 1 is negative 1. So we're at 2, and we're adding a negative 1. And I actually put 2 there if you were paying attention. This is not correct. This should have been 1. Okay, so now let's look at that again here. So it always helps to go back and check your work. Even, sometimes with something so simple, we might put the wrong difference here. So 2 plus negative 1, so we're at 2, and we're adding a negative 1. So that takes me to 1. So this, adding the opposite concept, works just as well even with a simple subtraction problem. So let's look at one more of these where we're subtracting a negative number. Let's say we have negative 15 minus a negative 2. Negative 15 minus negative 2. So we're going to add the opposite. The opposite of negative 2 is just a positive 2. And you could always put it on the number line. So negative 15, and then we're adding 2. So we're going 1, 2 to the right, taking us to negative 13. Let's go ahead and look at multiplying and dividing integers. So if when multiplying you have the same sign, or dividing for that matter, your product or quotient will be positive. So let's go ahead and look at a couple of these. Let's say we have 3 divided by 3. Okay, so that is going to equal 1. Okay, same holds true if we have negative 3 divided by negative 3. That is going to be a positive 3. Or I'm sorry, positive 1. Let's also look at some multiplication examples. If we had 3 times 5, okay, a positive times a positive is always a positive. Same holds true if it is a negative. Negative 3 times negative 5 is also a positive 15. Okay, so notice there's no multiplication symbol, but we know when you have the parentheses and no symbol between them, it means that we're going to be multiplying here. All right, let's look at when our signs are different. So anytime you have different signs, your product or quotient is going to be negative. So let's say that we have -3 divided by 3. Okay. A negative divided by a positive is a negative quotient, so -1. Okay, same thing goes if our positive was first, if we had 3 divided by -3, it will also be a negative. All right, and then looking at multiplication, okay, same thing holds true. If you have -3 times 5, your product will be negative. And if you had, fix that, if you have 3 times -5, your quotient will be negative as well. All right, so in this lesson, there'll be, after you watch the video, there's going to be a self-survey. If you could give that survey a try, there's going to be some practice problems on there, and the answers are provided. If you need more help with this, please email me and we'll work on it together in Jigsaw. After you complete the self-assessment and you are comfortable with the integers operations here, go ahead and move on to the quiz. Okay, good luck, and as always, email or call me with questions. Have a great day.